Last summer, over 260 million people around the world viewed the Women's World Cup final. But without those who paved the way for women's soccer, this would never have been possible. The 1999 FIFA Women's World Cup broke barriers and far exceeded expectations of what a women's sporting event could look like. While it was the culmination of a rapid period of growth for soccer in the United States in the 1990s, it also served as a launchpad for further growth of women's sports in America and around the globe. While the men's game has been in the public mind around the world since the Football Association was founded in 1863, the women's side of the sport has consistently struggled. Around the time of the First World War, there were a few instances of female exhibition teams in the British Isles and France, but an FA ban in 1921 led to women's soccer stagnation. It wasn't until 1971 when a non-FIFA sanctioned Women's World Cup was held in Mexico. The 1972 passage of Title IX in the United States outlawed gender-based discrimination for federally funded education programs and led to the creation of many college soccer teams for women and the growth of women's game in the United States. The USWNT was created in 1985 when it took part in another unofficial competition, the Mundialito, in which the US finished fourth. The Mundialito's success prompted FIFA to create a women's tournament, but since they were reluctant to grant it the World Cup title, it was initially to be named the M&M's Cup. The US won the M&M's Cup, held in China, but when they returned home, they were only greeted by one member of the press, and practically nobody cared. Since the folding of the NASL in 1984, soccer in the US had been mostly limited to colleges, though in 1994 this changed with the enormously successful FIFA World Cup, which was followed by the creation of Major League Soccer in 1996. Soccer was back on the map in America, but the women's game remained in obscurity. In 1995, the second FIFA Women's World Cup was held, this time in Sweden. The US reached the semi-finals, and Norway won the cup in front of tiny crowds in small Swedish stadiums. After the success of the 1994 World Cup and the 1996 Olympics, the United States Soccer Federation submitted a bid to FIFA to host the 1999 Women's World Cup. FIFA awarded the tournament to the US, and originally, USSF planned to host the tournament at smaller venues along the East Coast, but with the successes of 94 and 96, they decided to host it at large venues around the country. These included Giant Stadium, Soldier Field, Foxborough Stadium, and the final was to be held at Pasadena's Rose Bowl. The tournament's opening match took place at Giant Stadium, New Jersey, with the USA taking on Denmark. As the Americans defeated Denmark 3-0, more than 78,000 fans watched on. After just one game, the record for attendance at a women's sporting event had already been broken. The Women's World Cup had America's attention. The group stages continued and the attendance figures continued to exceed expectations. 65,000 filled out Soldier Field as USA defeated Nigeria 7-1. 50,000 sold out Foxborough for USA vs. North Korea. Even preliminary phase games not involving the hosts saw respectable attendances. Consistent turnouts above 20,000 contributed to the tournament's average attendance of 38,000, unparalleled for the Women's World Cup even today. While the events of the group stages off the pitch were a surprise to many, the matches themselves showed some evidence that women's soccer was still young. There were many lopsided results representative of a gulfing class between nations with established women's soccer infrastructure such as Germany, Brazil, Norway, and the US, and those who were yet to invest in the women's game: Mexico, Nigeria, Australia, and Japan. That being said, when top nations faced each other, the tournament created some classic matches. These included the dramatic 3-3 draw between Germany and Brazil. The doubleheader in Landover 4 days later was arguably the finest ticket of the tournament. More than 54,000 attended. In the first game, the hosts fell behind to Germany in the 5th minute of the game due to a Brandy Chastain own goal. The US recovered, however, with goals from Milbert, Chastain, and Fawcett setting them into the semifinals with a dramatic 3-2 win. Later that evening, Brazil seemed well on their way to the next round after going 3-0 up, but the underdog Nigerians stormed back in the second half to pull it back to 3-3. The Super Falcons nearly stunned the Seleção, but a golden goal free kick from the World Cup's Golden Boot winner Sisi broke Nigerian hearts. By now, it was increasingly evident that something special was happening for women's soccer. 73,000 fans attended the USA's semi-final at Stanford Stadium on the 4th of July and watched as the USWNT cruised past Brazil to advance to the final. Meanwhile in Foxborough, China stunned the defending champion Norway 5-0 and would certainly prove a formidable opponent for the US in Pasadena. The final on July 10th would prove to be a defining moment for not only women's soccer, but women's sports as a whole.
The question everyone has been asking lately, why has America become so enthralled with this Women's World Cup? In 3 short weeks, it has become the hottest story of the summer, exceeding all expectations. And now it comes down to this compelling matchup between China and the U.S.
Despite being held at the 90,000 capacity Rose Bowl in Pasadena, the game sold out. It was aired on national television on ABC and peaked at 40 million viewers, a figure unsurpassed in the U.S. until the 2014 World Cup. In 80-degree heat, 2 titans of the women's game, the U.S. and China, faced off with President Bill Clinton amongst the 90,000 in attendance. It almost seemed like the teams were too well matched. Neither team could find the net for 90 minutes. Despite both bolstering a superstar striker, Mia Hamm for the U.S., and the tournament's golden ball winner Sun Wen for China, the game entered golden goal extra time. China nearly had the breakthrough on 98 minutes, but a goal line clearance from Christine Lilly prevented the Chinese from achieving World Cup glory. After 120 minutes, the final remained goalless. It was going to a penalty shootout. Both China and the U.S. converted their first 2 shots. But then, U.S. goalkeeper Brianna Scurry made a huge save on Lu Ying to tip the balance in the U.S.'s favor. Christine Lilly and Mia Hamm both converted their shots, giving USA's left back Brandi Chastain a chance to win the World Cup for the Americans. The now iconic celebration was featured on the covers of Sports Illustrated and Newsweek, and still today is one of the most famous photographs in the history of sports. Leading up to the tournament, organizers had hoped that the 1999 Cup would be successful enough to garner interest for a professional women's soccer league.
You gotta see this, it's wicked.
WUSA Soccer!
In 2000, the WUSA was founded. However, after just 3 seasons, the league had failed.
One of the common mistakes, I think, in business in general is you tend to see something and project it at a linear or a growth path into the future. Those things that made it a success, national pride, and the entire country focused on one game, one team, doesn't necessarily translate into a league. So the budgets in WUSA were built assuming that they were going to have 20, 30,000 fans a game, and so the spending was assuming that, and when the fans didn't come, they were tens of millions of dollars upside down because they had built everything as if they were going to have these huge fan bases every game.
A few years later, U.S. Soccer tried again, this time with WPS. However, with the 2008 recession and lack of a salary cap, it too failed after 3 seasons.
Ultimately, the revenues didn't show up and the costs went too high and it was upside down again. So by the 3rd year, that league too had failed.
In 2013, a 3rd attempt at a pro league was established, the National Women's Soccer League. The NWSL was founded with the goal of long-term sustainability and more in cooperation with USSF to allow players to develop. The NWSL has become the most successful women's league in the world and has helped the USWNT to win 2 successive World Cups in 2015 and 2019.
The Boston owner and I sat down with U.S. Soccer and the 2 folks in charge of U.S. Soccer, and we constructed literally from scratch what would it take to build a sustainable league. So we created a completely different model, and a big part of what got us off the ground was U.S. Soccer paid the salaries of all the national team players to be in the league. And our league had obligations to create a training environment for all the players and create a competitive environment that I think you've seen since we won the last 2 World Cups, has created the best day-to-day game and training environment in the world.
The 99ers had a huge impact on me and growing my passion to want to play.
Just because I don't think I'd ever seen women athletes at that level, at that stage, with people in the stands screaming their name.
It also changed the way a lot of people viewed women's soccer, and I think viewed soccer as a whole here in this country.
great people that really shaped the history of this program, and I'll be forever grateful for that.